Hello students, welcome to the third lesson of the project management, the logical framework approach. It is part of the implementation plan. In this we have 4 modules. The first module is implementation plan of the project, where we understand what is planning. Second module, logical framework approach. We have a better understanding of what is actually logical framework approach. Third module, developing log frame. Fourth module, various stages of log frame. Planning is the important phase in the project management. In simple words to say, planning is deciding the best way to get a job done. Planning is to define and refine the best course of actions to achieve the project objectives. It is to set goals based on the objectives, keeping in view of the resources available. Planning is simply answering certain questions, that is the famous 5 W's and 2 H's of planning. What must be done, when must be done, where must be done, who must do it, why it must be done, how it must be done, how much it will cost. The W questions speak of designing of the project and the H questions speak of implementation of the project. The changes updated in this speak of monitoring and evaluation of the project. Now, let us understand why is the implementation plan necessary. The implementation plan helps stakeholders on the project to have understanding of the thorough process of the project. Every critical detail to be clearly understood. By detailing all the critical steps before starting the project, stakeholders can anticipate factors they otherwise would not consider until encountered and identify problems and challenges on the front end. It also helps the development team to have the better idea of the project progress and thereby compare their individual progress on the project. Planning ensures the proper use of all the resources according to the objectives to achieve the goals. No plan means no control over the project. Project management has many tools and techniques to perform planning. Let us consider one of them, that is the logical framework approach. A logical framework, also known as log frame, is a tool for planning and managing development projects. Managing means for monitoring and evaluation. It looks like a table and aims to present the information about the key factors of a project in a clear, logical and systematic way. This framework is basically helpful throughout the project cycle. It was developed in 1969 in United States and ever since been used worldwide. The log frame is a simple thinking tool. The logical framework approach is understood more as a set of ideas and way of thinking. To say in simple words, it is to think, plan and act. The log frame helps to organize the thinking, relate activities to expected results, that is the output and purpose, set resources, that is inputs required, measure and verify the project progress and success, identify potential risks and assumptions. Now, let us see the strengths of logical framework approach. Problems are identified and analyzed systematically. Second, the objectives are clearly formulated and measured. The risks and conditions are taken into account. It also serves as main reference for detailed work plans and budgets. Weaknesses of logical framework approach. It cannot replace the professional expertise and experience. Tendency of focusing too much on problems rather than opportunities and vision. This may cause delay in the project. A tendency for poorly thought through sets of activities and objectives to be entered in a table, giving the appearance of a logical framework when in fact the key elements of the analytical process have been skipped. It is more difficult to use the LFA to review and restructure ongoing activities which were not designed using LFA principles and practices. Who should be involved in preparing this log frame? The project manager is the key person responsible in preparing it. However, it should be a team effort involving even the team and the stakeholders. Always consider that it is easily understandable by all the participants. The logical framework approach actually is based on two main phases, analysis and planning phases. There are four elements of the analysis phase, namely stakeholder analysis, problem analysis, objective analysis, strategy analysis. Stakeholder analysis identifies the potential stakeholders including preliminary institutional capacity assessment, gender analysis and need of other vulnerable groups such as disabled. Problem analysis identifies the main problem and establishing the cause and effect relationships using methods like problem tree. Objective analysis. After stakeholder and problem analysis have been completed, the problems are transformed into objectives using methods like objective tree. This analysis is the image of an improved situation in the future. The next is strategy analysis. This identifies different strategies to achieve solutions and select the appropriate strategy for the objectives. This analysis phase is an iterative learning process rather than a simple set of linear steps. For example, while stakeholder analysis must be carried out early in the process, it must be reviewed and refined as new questions are asked and new information comes to light. Here you can see an example of a problem tree. The core problem, lack of sufficient of clean water. What are the causes? Insufficient maintenance funds, deteriorated water system, bureaucratic water administration, hence few service connections. All these are the causes for this problem. And what are the effects of these? High rate of diseases, high rate of infant mortality, low productivity of workers which leads to low incomes. This is converted to objective tree. We have seen the causes and effects that are causing the problem in the problem tree, which turns into a objective tree. In the objective tree, as seen here in the example, the desirable state is adequate clean water. How is it obtained? The means are sufficient funds, hence good water system. Best practice water administration to all houses connected. And what are the ends? Low rate of diseases, low infant mortality, high productivity leads to high incomes. The next phase is the planning phase. In the planning phase, the results of the analysis phase are converted into implementation plan. This stage has three elements: developing the log frame, activity scheduling, resource scheduling. Developing the log frame. The logical framework matrix is the log frame. It is prepared requiring further analysis and refinement of ideas. Activity scheduling, determining the activities and resource requirements to achieve the objectives using tools like work breakdown structure, bar charts, so on. Resource scheduling. Based on the activity scheduling, the resources are allocated and the budget is prepared using tools like Gantt charts, CPM, PERT, linear responsibility matrix, etc. In the planning phase, we have seen the log frame, that is the logical framework matrix. The logical framework matrix is prepared requiring further analysis and refinement of ideas. It is a 4x4 matrix which includes the project goal, purpose, what the key assumptions are and how the outputs will be monitored and evaluate it. Here in the table, you can see how the log frame is presented. To the left, we have the rows as objectives. The second column where we have verifiable indicators, the indicators that are used for verification. Third column, means of verification, and the fourth is assumptions. Now, to understand this log frame, we need to have a understanding of certain terminology. Now, let us consider the terminology that are used in the above framework. Here is the meaning of each of them. Objectives: the goal, purpose, output, activities of the project are described in the left hand column of the logical framework matrix. Next, goal. Goal is the broader impact of the project, the ultimate result. For example, increasing farm family income. The next term is purpose. Purpose is the immediate outcome achieved of the end of the project. Example for this, increase farm production. Next term, outputs. The specific intended results of the project activities to achieve specific purpose. A project team responsible for producing a certain set of results can be considered as an example for outputs. The next term is activities. The actual tasks required and the sequence to carry out them in producing the desired outputs is activities. Example can be to provide the farm women with new skills, new inputs such as seed, credit, tools, etc. Next term is verifiable indicators, the quantitative and qualitative ways of measuring progress and whether project output, purpose and goal have been achieved. Example, if you achieve the output to supply farm women with improved seed, then the purpose of increased production will be seen. Means of verification: the information or data required to assess progress against indicators and their sources. The concept of cause and effect, that is, if something occurs or is achieved, then something else will be the result. This is considered as example of means of verification. Assumptions: the external factors which may affect the link between each level of objectives that cannot be controlled. Example, natural conditions of rain falling, economic factors of crop price being stable and farmers using new skills. The next term is inputs. Inputs are such as material, equipment, finance, human resources that are needed to carry out the activities of the project are considered as inputs. For example, the budget, the mechanisms for the farm production, the crop mechanisms, number of men and women required for the farm, the rains, all these can be considered as inputs. The super goal, the long term goal, the long term result of continued achievement of the goal of the project is considered as super goal. As considered for our example, the improved farm family lifestyle is the good example of super goal. Now, in the table, let us note that the two boxes in the center of the activities row are not used for measurable indicators and means of verification, as the progress and success of the activities are measured at the output level. Remember, the activities are carried out to achieve the outputs. These spare boxes can therefore be used to provide any additional information such as inputs and budget requirements. Log frame works in 3 stages. Here in the example, you can see the first stage, that is the top down approach for the log frame. First, we start at the top and using the information from the objective tree of the analysis phase, consider the overall goal of the project. what issue or problem is the project trying to address. The goal may be beyond the reach of this project on its own. What ultimate objective is the project contributing to? This should be a brief statement or summary. For example, let us consider to increase literacy among young people in a particular region. Next, describe the desired outcome that the project will achieve. This should be clear and brief. The project purpose and the results shall be of the acronym of SMART, that is specific, measurable, approved by the project owner and the project group, realistic and time bound. For this, the example is to increase school attendance and educational skills of the children in that particular area. What is our goal? To increase literacy among young people in a particular region. Hence, the purpose is to increase school attendance and education skills of the children in that particular area. For this, what are the outputs? What does outputs describe? It describes particular output to achieve purpose of the project. There will be several outputs such as appoint new teachers, create awareness of education in that particular area. Then activities. We need to list out the activities which are needed to achieve these outputs. There may be several for each output. Statements should be brief and with an emphasis on action words. Example, conducting recruitments for new teachers, providing training to the newly appointed, accommodation for teachers and conducting campaigns for families with little children. Now, we have the list of activities that are to be performed. Next, we also group the inputs and list each one rather than repeatedly. This may include a summary of the project budget also. Example, the budget required for the training, training space, accommodation, support for existing teaching staff, teaching materials, transport to village, project coordinators, field workers, etc. Now, this leads to the second stage, that is to work across in the log frame. Here, starting either from the top or the bottom of the hierarchy of objectives, begin to work across the log frame. You can see that in the picture which is represented through the arrow. Here, we are identifying the indicators for measuring your progress. Indicators need to define quality, quantity and timing. In short, QQT. There are two kinds of indicators you will have to focus on, the process indicators and the impact indicators. Process indicators, it measures the extent to which you have achieved your stated objectives. Here in our example, how many children are attending school by specified time. The next is impact indicators, which help to monitor the achievement and the impact of your work. In our example, how many children passed the specified literacy test and at the specified time. In addition to these, indicators can also be direct, indirect, indicators at the purpose level, indicators at the output level. Direct is the number of children attending the school. Indirect, more books borrowed from the school library by the students, suggesting more children to read, therefore wider literacy. Indicators at the purpose level. School attendance of 6 to 14-year-old is increased by 200% within 4 years. That leads to 90% 6 to 14-year-old in that region have gained literacy skills within that particular 4 years. Next is the indicators at the output level. 5 language teachers are recruited and trained by that specified date. At least 2 classes are running in all schools at times when children are not required to complete family duties by that date. At least 3 information sessions for families with school age children held in each village, demonstrating benefits of literacy by that specified date. All these are the part of our example quoted, are considered as indicators at the output level. Next is sources and means of verification being performed. What information will you need and how and from where it can be gathered? Will project staff or others need to keep records, or can they get the information from somewhere else? Consider the cost implications if necessary and build this into the project budget. But remember, the donors can be wary of this evidence and it may later be necessary to demonstrate your claims. The third stage is bottom up stage. You can see in the picture how the arrows are being indicated to show the bottom up approach. In this, the assumptions are handled. Reflecting up from the bottom of your log frame, consider how, if each assumption holds, it will be possible to move to the next stage of the project. Next, we need to double check the entire log frame. The checklist for this is: will the input and activities clearly lead to the output required to achieve the purpose and contribute to the goal? Will the indicators and means of verification effectively measure the progress of the project? Are the assumptions reasonable, or do they indicate a level of risk which suggests that the project is unlikely to get off the ground or to be completed? Is the project staff committed to the objectives and indicators identified and sees them as realistic and achievable? Are there any changes which could be made which will make the project more practical and workable? Once the checklist is done, you need to write it up. That is, when the log frame has been checked and it is truly logical and representative of the project, type it up onto a A4 sheet. At this point, all the relevant stakeholders should have a chance to contribute to and agree upon the completed log frame. Then stay informed. If still you have not finished, remember that this log frame or the LFA is a flexible tool for planning, monitoring and reporting your project. As the project progresses and situations change, return to the log frame and revise it accordingly. Agree these changes with the donor and the stakeholders and keep everyone informed so that they are able to keep up to date with current progress of the project and its future direction. Do you have any doubts or any clarifications in this topic?
Madam, what is the exact difference between means of verification and assumptions? Are they both not used for verification?
Means of verification works across the verifiable indicators mentioned. That is, it is like a concept of cause and effect. If something occurs or is achieved, then something else will be the result. Whatever indicators have been specified, that are used as a means of verification. Whereas assumptions is, it can be an external factors such as the natural conditions like rainfall or the economic factors of crop or the farmers, new skills that the farmers require. All these are considered as assumptions which may affect the link between each level of the objectives that cannot be controlled. Do you have any doubts in this topic? This is all about the logical framework approach of the implementation plan. Thank you.